Okay, Nakshi, I think we can get started. Hey, good evening, everyone. Uh, Thank you for come to learn more about how our mental wellness is linked to uh, sunlighting and shading. If you ever struggle to get up in the morning because you wake up in a dark room, now you may know the reason why. And if you ever having hard time fall asleep in the night, and hopefully you learn something from Nakshi's presentation. So Nakshi, I'll let you take it over.
I'm just going to I need permission to share my screen,
Oh,
Zach.
yes, of course. There.
All right, so hi everyone. My name is Nakshi. I'm studying psychology at York University. I'm in my last year. I've been working with AI shading for a couple of months as a mental health researcher. And I have found numerous articles linking the benefits of sunlight exposure to mental well being. So today I plan to share some of those most exciting findings with you. So, just to start off, have any of you heard of something called a biological clock or a circadian rhythm? Okay, I see quite a few nods. Okay, so that's good. Well, you're going to leave this presentation knowing a lot more about those things. So, circadian rhythms are the 24-hour biological cycles that are found in many species, including us humans. They control all of the physical and cognitive changes that our bodies go through in a 24-hour period. So, think of them kind of as built in alarm clocks. So, for example, if you're used to having lunch at 1 p.m. every day, then the one day when there's a huge pile of paperwork on your desk and you're going to have to skip lunch, at 1 p.m., your body's alarm is still going to go ding, 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 I'm hungry. So, aside from hunger, one of the biggest things that circadian rhythms control is when you go to sleep and when you wake up. But here's a huge question: how does your body know exactly what time it is? How does your body know exactly when it's time to wake up and exactly when it's time to go to sleep? It uses the cues of natural light and darkness to control each of these bodily functions. So if you take a look at this graph, on the x-axis over here, we have various times of the day where the sleep period in this instance is defined to be from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. On the y-axis, we're shown 3 different bodily functions and how they fluctuate throughout the day. So following the red line, you can see that our body's temperature is high during the day and it drops during the sleep period, essentially cooling us down enough so that we're able to fall asleep. The black line shows levels of cortisol, which relate to how alert we are. And you can see this drop during the first couple hours of sleep, and then levels gradually rise back up the closer we get to being awake. Looking at the blue line now, which is perhaps the most important for us, it's showing us the levels of melatonin that are present during the day. So melatonin, for those who may not know, is a hormone that when it's present in our bodies, it makes us feel sleepy. And when it's absent, we're awake. So you can see here that melatonin levels are extremely low during the day, which makes sense because we don't want to be sleepy during the day. And melatonin production seems to start around 9 p.m. and has this steep increase going into the sleep period, reaching its peak production at around 3 a.m., after which it starts to gradually decline until it returns back to the daytime low. All 3 of these functions put together dictate our sleep-wake cycles, and the one and only cue they use for when to be present versus when to be absent is light. So you may have noticed before that when you go to sleep with your blinds open, your eyes automatically open when the sun is shining through the window, regardless of whether you set an alarm or not. This is because sunlight has the biggest influence on our circadian rhythms. So when the sun is present versus when it's at its highest versus when it's absent, that is what gives your brain the signal it needs to control all of these functions. So if we had the chance to go to sleep in a dark room and wake up bathed in sunlight, it would help keep our circadian rhythms functioning at their most optimal level. So let's talk about vitamin D, or the sunshine vitamin that it's known as. It's one that majority of us are very familiar with, yet it's one that most people don't seem to get enough of. According to the Cleveland Clinic Hospital, about 42% of Americans are vitamin D deficient, with some populations having even higher levels of deficiency, such as people over the age of 65. Low vitamin D levels have been associated with a shorter sleep duration and lower sleep efficacy in older men. Having reduced levels of vitamin D is also associated with longer time needed to fall asleep, as well as greater difficulties in maintaining sleep in the general population. But you may already have an idea of the negative impact of low vitamin D. So then what am I here for? Let me talk about a study conducted by Lambert and colleagues that looked into the effect on various natural factors on the amount of serotonin produced and used by our brain. Now, I know that there's a slim chance that any of you have a degree in neurobiology, so let me just very quickly explain what serotonin is before we dive into the study. Serotonin is a hormone, meaning that it is a chemical messenger that communicates information throughout your brain and your body. So when someone is talking about the happy hormone, they're essentially referring to serotonin. Serotonin plays a very versatile role in our bodies, but its key roles are to stabilize our mood, make us feel happy, and give us these feelings of well-being. So when you feel energized after an exercise session, or you feel super happy because the DJ played a song that you haven't heard in 5 years, that's your serotonin at work. Serotonin is also known for promoting good sleep by playing an active role in maintaining our body's circadian rhythms. So since our moods, sleep, and appetites are so heavily affected by serotonin, it comes as no surprise that multiple studies have linked low levels of serotonin to depression and anxiety, as well as mood seasonality and seasonal affective disorder. So going back to the study by Lambert and colleagues, the researchers here monitored their 101 male participants' brains to see how changing seasons and alternating levels of sunlight affected their serotonin turnover, or in other words, how much of the chemical is used. So as you can kind of see in this graph, they found that the estimated serotonin turnover was the highest in the summer, followed by spring, then autumn, and lastly winter. There is this drastic, significant effect in serotonin levels in winter compared to summer, which can explain why a lot of us tend to feel more sluggish and unmotivated during gloomy days. The researchers also found that the rate of production of serotonin in the brain was directly related to the duration of sunlight that the participants were exposed to. So in the sense that production rose very rapidly with increased luminosity. So quite literally, the more light we're exposed to, the more of the happy hormone our brain produces. So it's crucial for us to make sure that we're exposed to enough light, especially in the colder months. So, and since we're on the topic of serotonin, I'm going to introduce something called SSRIs. SSRIs are a class of drugs that are primarily used as antidepressants to treat major depressive disorder, anxiety disorders, and other psychological conditions such as OCD or PTSD. SSRIs essentially work by increasing levels of serotonin in the brain. So paroxetine is one of these antidepressants. There's a study which found that the amount of sunshine that patients that were already taking paroxetine were exposed to on a monthly basis actually predicted how well their brain responded to the antidepressant. So in seasons where there was less sunlight, more time was needed for the paroxetine treatment to be efficient compared to the months that there was an abundance of it. So I think you're starting to get an idea of how important sunlight really is. But I'm going to talk about one more study. The last study that I'm going to talk about for tonight has a very long title, but it looked to measure how chronodisruption, which is the ongoing chronic disruption of circadian rhythms associated with individuals' well-being. So a total of 825 participants were studied, with the majority of them being female. Each participant was placed into one of these 4 groups based on gender and whether they worked 5 to 6 days a week or 7 days a week. So here are some details about the sample that was studied, because I promise it's important. The male participants were on average older than the women. About 67% of the men worked as farmers, compared to only 46% of the women. So compared to the female groups, the men were working longer hours each day, and they were working outside a lot more. So what this study found is that for the general woman group that was studied, it was found that those who went to sleep at a later time and woke up later in the day, plus had a shorter sleep duration, had worse well-being compared to the male groups. So essentially, if later sleep-wake cycle and a shorter sleep duration were the reason why the women had worse well-being, then the researchers should have found the same effect in the men that also had later sleep-wake cycles and a shorter sleep duration, right? But they did not. The men that had this type of sleep pattern still did not show the same negative effect on their well-being that the women showed. So why was that? Another interesting finding is showed in this graph that I pulled from the report. The dark gray bars here represent the males, and the light gray ones represent the females. So these bars are graphed to show each group's average WHO-5 score, which is a scale that is essentially used to evaluate psychological well-being. So you can see here that regardless of whether it was the 5 to 6 or 7 working days group, in both instances, the men had a higher well-being score on average than the females. Now, the reason why I said this is interesting is because if you recall, I mentioned that the men in our study were older, they worked longer hours, and they were outside doing a lot more physical labor than the women. So then how come they're still somehow at a better place psychologically than the women? The answer, yet again, is sunlight exposure. The researchers found that the group with the best well-being had more sunlight exposure than the other groups. Simply by virtue of their profession, which is farming, the male participants were exposed to longer hours of sunlight than the women, and they had the opportunity to be exposed to the natural light and darkness cycle. So them going to sleep in the darkness and being up and at it with the sunlight, that's what made their circadian rhythm be in sync with the naturally occurring light cycle. And because of that, they had better well-being than the females of the study, despite having a more physically demanding job. So I talked about 3 huge studies tonight, 3 out of the pool of thousands, all of which point to how important it is for us to maintain regular exposure to the natural sunlight and darkness cycle. Not only is it important for our body, but very much so to maintain a healthy mental state. You don't have to make huge changes to your lifestyle, like forcing yourself to stand out in the freezing cold during winter just to get a little bit of sun. You can start small. Take steps to regulate your circadian rhythms, which is something that AI shading can help with year-round, because unlike the regular blinds, these blinds are made using artificial intelligence technology so that you can enjoy more of a deep sleep going to sleep in a dark room and wake up bathing in sunshine. So let AI shading take some weight off your shoulders when it comes to regulating your health. Thank you for your time and attention.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nakshi.
Thank you.
You perfected it. Like you have set a really high bar for the rest of us. And yeah, awesome presentation, very educational and very insightful. And the slides, they're really well structured and very aesthetic.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's just for me it was a true pleasure just to listen to it, and I can see the hard work that you have put into it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Zach.
So, any questions from the group? And who want to improve your health now with AI shading?
Everybody, I guess.
Nice.
I
Yeah.
can't. I don't know if I can put this in words because I actually have a science health background. So I was just kind of wondering if you had seen any research in terms of when you were talking about the paroxetine,
Yeah.
if there were any other drugs that also had that same effect in terms of like say depression or any of that that you came across.
I actually haven't. This is the only one that I seem to come across in terms of sunshine and its effect on that. But if that's something that's interesting, I could look into it, see if there's any research there.
Okay, I was just thinking because I work before this I worked primarily with senior with
Oh.
Alzheimer's and dementia, and like depression was quite a
Mhm.
big thing. So I was kind of wondering like how, in terms of this application, what type of selling point can we put in terms of like senior care facilities or hospitals and stuff. That's where I was going along with that. So if other medications also have that a similar effect with sunlight, then that might be an even better selling point as well,
Yeah.
including mental institutions as well.
Yeah, for sure. I'm pretty sure they would, because if all SSRIs technically they work by increasing serotonin, and so it doesn't exactly matter which brand or which specific one it is, they do the same function. And so if this was found for one of them, I'm pretty sure if the research is conducted on other ones that they would probably have a similar finding.
All right. Bodes well for us.
Yeah.
It's really good research too.
Thank you. There's a lot of actually very interesting articles, but if I were to go to put them in here, we'd be here all night.
So the main take. Too bad I don't have a life science background, but what I have learned for myself is that the more sunshine, the happier I will be, pretty much. And
yeah, quite literally. The happier your body and your brain will be too.
Well, does it mean that people from Edmonton and Calgary are happier than people in Toronto?
Do you guys get more sun?
Yes. Indeed.
Yeah, probably. Provided that you don't always live in a dark room and not go out anywhere. Yeah, probably.
Can't really see if I don't live in a dark room. You can see that I stay in a dark room. So, yeah. But I have a tiny bit of OCD. Not really sure if sun will help with that.
Oh, that's the Catherine. That's the amount of vitamin D you need.
Supplementation, if you're taking supplements in general within Calgary for the winter, it's pretty high.
Is that per
I was told to take
week?
this
Per day.
Per day?
Okay.
Well, what is that? What does that do?
That
60,000?
Yeah.
that's a little overkill. Even like patients that I've worked with that
For a
like
week,
require extra
once a
vitamin
week,
D are only taking 4,000.
Once a week. I think my vitamin D levels were so low because I was sitting all day in front of a computer in a dark room. So I was practically very deficient.
Mushrooms and like mushrooms.
Mushrooms don't work.
No?
Doctor was like, when the some nurse told me mushrooms, and I went to the doctor, opened Google search. I searched for like vitamin D in mushrooms, and in 100 grams it was like single digits. And the doctor was like, yeah,
absorption levels.
No, mushrooms don't work, it seems. Even the doctor said that.
You probably do, but to a very small degree compared to what's needed.
I don't know. Fun fact, as we still have time, how many of you still think that if we eat carrots, our eyesight will become better?
If we what?
Sorry, if we had what?
If you eat carrots, it will like improve your eyesight.
I've grown up hearing that.
Yeah,
whatever you're
my
going
mom
through.
used to stuff carrots into my mouth because my eyesight kept worsening throughout the years. And
Yeah.
recently, I found out that it was North American propaganda because the US during World War II they invented radar and they did not want the German army to know that they invented radar. So they just told that our soldiers grew up eating carrots. That's why they have better vision because of vitamin A and all that crap. So it was such a good
Oh,
propaganda that it's stuck until now, and people still think that carrots are like vitamin A. But if you actually look at the nutritional information, no. Cauliflower is better in vitamin A, I think, than
Josh, what
carrot.
I'm hearing is a great marketing campaign that even to this day and age, it is still working.
Yeah, we can literally say this, See if we can
whoever
incorporate
marketed
such.
that had did a very good job.
Yeah, I think it was a military general who had a lot of resources. So yes.